Mom said we're canceling Halloween this year. Too expensive, she told me. Don't send money, don't bring the kids. So I didn't. I tossed the candy list aside, told Ethan and Lily Grandma needed rest. But 2 days later, my phone buzzed a bank alert from the credit card I'd co-signed for my parents. 6 flight tickets. First class. Destination Arizona. The names Mom, Dad Tom, his wife, their kids. Not mine. I froze, staring at the screen, my reflection warped in the glass. For a second, I thought it had to be a scam. But it wasn't. They hadn't canceled Halloween, just us. I grew up believing my parents were good people. The kind who'd drop off casseroles for neighbors, smile at church, send polite Christmas cards. But being their daughter came with a different kind of charity, one that always flowed one way. I paid for the little things, a new roof, the property tax, that emergency water heater. They always promised to pay me back. They never did. And I never asked, because that's what good daughters do, right? They help. This year, I wanted Halloween to be special again. The kids were finally old enough to remember it. Ethan had his heart set on dressing as a vampire. Lily wanted to be a fairy. For years, we'd spent the holiday at my parents' place, handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, eating my mom's pumpkin bread. It was the one tradition that still made me feel like part of a family instead of an ATM. When Mom called to cancel, her tone was almost casual. It's just too much this year, Joy. The economy, you know, we're all tightening our belts. I pictured her sitting at the kitchen counter, stirring her coffee with that tiny silver spoon I'd bought her last Mother's Day. I offered to cover it like always, but she shut it down fast, too fast. No, honey, don't. You've done enough. Something in her voice made me pause. It wasn't gratitude. It was something closer to guilt, thinly wrapped in politeness. But I brushed it off. People get weird about money, especially parents. That night, I took down the orange lights we'd hung on our balcony and folded the kids' costumes back into the closet. Grandma's tired this year, I told them. Ethan nodded like an adult, but Lily's little face fell. So no candy at Grandma's, she whispered. I smiled through the lump in my throat. We'll still make it fun at home. 2 days later, the alert from the bank popped up on my phone while I was packing lunches. Transaction approved. Airline purchase, $4,872. I blinked. My stomach turned. That card was only for my parents' expenses. Groceries, gas prescriptions. I opened the statement. 6 tickets, round trip, Portland to Phoenix. The passengers' names glared back at me like a joke I wasn't invited to understand. Mom, Dad, Tom, Diane. Their kids. I scrolled again, double-checking, half expecting to find my own name somewhere, maybe a mistake. Nothing. I refreshed the page, hoping it would disappear like it was a glitch. It didn't. I laughed the kind of laugh that comes out sharp and empty. My parents weren't saving money, they were spending mine. On a family trip that didn't include me or my children. At first, I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Tom had planned a surprise and charged it accidentally. Maybe Mom forgot to tell me they'd invited us too. So I called. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sugar-sweet. Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay? I tried to keep mine steady. Yeah, just got an alert from the bank. It says there was a flight purchase. She cut me off before I could finish. Oh, that. Yes, your father booked something last minute. We haven't traveled in ages. You know how stressful things have been. I stared at the ceiling. With Tom and his family, a pause. Then softly, well, yes. He's been under a lot of pressure. Diane thought the kids could use a little sunshine. So you canceled Halloween to go on vacation. Don't be dramatic, she said, her tone shifting. It's just a few days, Joy, and we needed to use the card for the points. The card for the points. My name, my guarantee, my monthly payments reduced to points. I didn't say anything for a long time. My silence made her uneasy. We'll pay you back, she added quickly. You know we always do. I almost laughed. They never did. When I hung up, the quiet in my apartment was so loud it felt physical. Ethan was coloring at the table, humming to himself. Lily was taping paper bats to the window. They were still so excited for a holiday their grandparents had erased. I opened my laptop and pulled up the credit account. Hotel confirmation, SUV rental, dinner reservations. Thousands of dollars stacked up like proof of betrayal. Every charge time-stamped. Every receipt addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Harris. At work the next day, I told Casey. She swore under her breath, "You're kidding." After all the bills you've covered for them, I shrugged. I guess family loyalty has an expiration date. She leaned back, studying me. You could freeze the card, you know. I can't. They'd be stuck out there. Joy, she said quietly, that's not your emergency. It's theirs. Her words followed me home like a ghost. That evening, I got a message from Mom, a photo of a sunset over red rocks. Isn't it beautiful here? Tom finally seems relaxed. There was a tiny heart emoji at the end, as if that made it softer. Then a second photo, my father smiling, drink in hand, my brother beside him, in matching Hawaiian shirts. My mother had posted it publicly, tagged everyone but me. The caption read, "Family time we all needed." That was the moment it stopped being about money. I wasn't angry because they used my credit. I was angry because they used me, my stability, my silence, my endless forgiveness. That night, I sat at my desk scrolling through the transactions again, but this time with purpose. Every number told a story. Every payment was leverage. By Friday, the Arizona charges had doubled. Room service, spa treatments, another dinner reservation at a 5-star restaurant. Each transaction felt like a bruise I couldn't cover. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow turning the room into a quiet battlefield. For years, I'd handled other people's budgets, solved other people's messes. It was second nature to fix things. But this time, I didn't want to fix anything. I wanted them to feel it. I opened the account settings and hovered over the freeze card option. My finger trembled. Then I stopped. Not yet. Not like this. Saturday morning, Casey called. "You look like someone who hasn't blinked in 12 hours. I've been doing math," I said flatly. The emotional kind or the financial kind? Both. I told her everything. The fake cancellation, the vacation, the silence that followed. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "You know what they count on, right? That you'll keep being decent." Her words hit like truth disguised as advice. That evening, I FaceTimed my parents. They were sitting on a balcony, golden light behind them, drinks in hand. I caught my brother's laughter in the background. "Hey, Mom," I said. "How's the trip?" "Oh, it's lovely, honey. You'd love it here." "I bet." "So quick question. Did you know the card you used is under my name?" Her smile faltered. "Well, yes, but you said it was fine for family expenses." "Family?" I repeated. "Right, just wasn't sure if that still included me." She laughed nervously. "Joy, please. You're overreacting. It's just money." "Exactly," I said. "It's just money. You won't miss it." I hung up before she could answer. After putting the kids to bed, I made tea, sat back at the table, and logged into the account one more time. My heartbeat was steady, calm, almost detached. I drafted 2 short emails, one to the bank requesting immediate cancellation of all supplementary cards, and another confirming that I would no longer serve as guarantor on the account. Then I waited. By Sunday morning, the first text arrived from Mom Honey. "Something's wrong with the card. Hotel says it's declined. Can you check?" I didn't reply. A second one came an hour later. "Please call me." We're at the front desk. Still nothing. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing their chaos. I was letting them live in it. By the time my phone started vibrating non-stop that Sunday afternoon, the house was quiet. Ethan and Lily were carving pumpkins on the balcony, the scent of cinnamon candles floating through the air. I let the phone buzz on the counter, call after call, name after name, until it finally stopped. Then came the knock. It was almost 5 p.m. when I opened the door. My parents stood there sunburned and exhausted, their luggage in the hallway behind them. Tom and Diane hovered a few steps back, both of them avoiding my eyes. Finally, Mom said, pushing past me into the living room, "We've been trying to reach you all day. Do you have any idea what we just went through?" I leaned against the doorway. "Enlighten me." "The bank froze the card. We couldn't check out of the resort. Your father had to call his friend to book emergency flights home. It was humiliating." I folded my arms. "Imagine that." She blinked. "Joy, this isn't funny. They said you canceled everything." I did. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Dad stepped forward, face flushed. "You can't just pull something like that without warning. We were stranded out there. You mean..." I said evenly on a trip I didn't know existed until I saw it on my statement. Tom finally spoke, his voice low and defensive. It wasn't your business what Mom and Dad did with their vacation. Except they did it on my credit. Diane cleared her throat, pretending to play peacemaker. I think this is just a misunderstanding. Your mom thought I cut her off. My mom thought she could lie. She thought she could cancel Halloween for my kids, take the money I used to support them, and spend it on margaritas in Arizona. Mom's face tightened. Don't twist it like that. We just needed a break. Then you should have taken one, I said softly, with your own money. Dad's voice rose. You're being ungrateful, Joy, after everything we've done for you. That word ungrateful hit like static in my head. Years of dinners, bills, and favors replayed in a flash. The roof repair, the medical copays, the time I bailed Tom out of debt because Dad said it would keep peace in the family. I took a breath. You've done a lot for me, sure. Like teaching me that family can take advantage of you and still expect a thank you. Watch your tone, Dad snapped. I smiled thinly. I am, for once. Mom's voice cracked. We didn't mean to hurt you. I almost believed her, almost. But then I remembered the photos, the matching Hawaiian shirts, the post about family time we all needed. Mom, I said, when you told me to skip Halloween because it was too expensive, did you already have the flights booked? She hesitated, then looked down. That was all the answer I needed. You could have just said you didn't want us there, I continued. Would have been cheaper. Don't talk like that in front of your brother, she whispered. Tom shifted awkwardly. Look, Joy, maybe it wasn't handled right, but locking the cards, come on. That was overkill. I met his eyes. So was lying. He didn't reply. From the hallway, Lily's laugh floated in light unbothered. Ethan followed, holding up his pumpkin. Mom, can I show Grandma? Mom turned toward him, maybe hoping a smile could smooth everything over. Of course, sweetheart. I stepped in front of her. No. The word hung there, heavy and final. You don't get to smile at them after what you did. You told me not to bring my kids because they were too much. Then you used my credit to take Tom's kids on vacation. You didn't just lie to me, you lied to them. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she had nothing to say. Dad rubbed his temples. What do you want from us? An apology? No, I said. Accountability. I walked over to the counter, picked up a stack of papers I'd printed that morning. Bank statements, confirmation emails, every charge linked to that trip. I handed them to him. You'll find your signatures here. Every transaction. I'm closing this account and the debt is yours now. The bank already approved the transfer. Mom paled. You wouldn't, I already did. Tom muttered something under his breath. Diane grabbed his arm, warning him to stop. I'm done being your safety net, I said quietly. From now on, if you want to travel, you'll need to earn it. Like I did. Dad looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Mom's eyes glistened. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm freeing myself. Behind me, Lily tugged at my sleeve. Mom, are we still carving pumpkins? I smiled at her. Yeah, baby, we are. When I turned back, my parents were already at the door gathering their things. Tom mumbled a goodbye. Diane avoided my gaze entirely. As the door clicked shut, the apartment fell into a peaceful kind of quiet, the kind I hadn't felt in years. I exhaled slowly, a weight lifting that I hadn't realized I was carrying. Later that night, while my kids laughed and passed out candy to trick-or-treaters, I got one last text from my mother. We got home. I hope you're happy. I typed back. For the first time, I am. That night, after the door shut behind them, the apartment felt different, lighter somehow. The same walls, the same furniture, but no guilt hanging in the corners. Just me, the kids, and the sound of their laughter echoing down the hallway. Ethan handed me a lopsided pumpkin with triangle eyes. We did it ourselves, he said proudly. Lily smeared frosting on my cheek as she decorated cookies. The air smelled like cinnamon sugar and peace. For once, I wasn't financing someone else's happiness, I was living mine. When the kids went to bed, I sat on the couch with my laptop open. I canceled every automatic payment I'd ever set for my parents' utilities insurance, their emergency fund. My hands didn't shake. I felt steady, free. A week later, an envelope came in the mail. Inside was a check from my father for part of the resort bill and a note in my mother's handwriting. We didn't realize how much we relied on you. We'll figure things out from now on. No apology. But it was enough. I tucked the letter away and looked at my kids' pumpkins on the windowsill. The candlelight flickered against the glass, glowing like small, stubborn hearts. Maybe that's what change looked like, not loud, not perfect, just honest. I poured myself a cup of tea, smiled at the quiet, and whispered to no one in particular, "Happy Halloween." I learned something that night. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's debt disguised as devotion. For years, I thought keeping the peace meant paying the price. Turns out, peace comes when you stop buying your place in the family. This Halloween, my kids will remember laughter, not rejection. And I'll remember the moment I chose self-respect over silence. If you've ever been the one who gives until there's nothing left, maybe it's your turn to stop fixing everything. Share your story in the comments and hit subscribe for more true stories of betrayal, justice, and strength.
My name is Natalie Galvin, and I'm 28 years old. If you'd met me a year ago, you would have thought I had everything figured out. Steady job, quiet apartment, a relationship that looked perfect on paper. I thought so too, until the night I realized how blind I'd been. Ethan and I met 3 years earlier at a tech conference in the city. He was all bright smiles and messy energy, the kind of person who filled every room he walked into. I was the opposite, measured, methodical, a software engineer who preferred structure to chaos. Somehow we balanced each other. Or at least that's what I believed. Back then I used to admire how passionate he was about marketing and new ideas. He talked big about starting his own creative agency one day. I liked his drive. I liked him. I believed in him so much that when his company downsized and he lost his job, I didn't even hesitate. I covered our rent for 4 months while he looked for work. I cooked, cleaned, encouraged him through endless interviews, even rewrote his resume at midnight with tired eyes and cold coffee. I kept telling myself love was about teamwork. Then came the first mention of Lila, his ex. "She's kind of a free spirit," he said one night, laughing over an old photo she'd texted him. We were toxic, but fun. I remember the word toxic lingering in my mind. He said it like a compliment. At the time, I brushed it off. Everyone had history, right? Lila was part of his past, and I was his present. At least that's what I told myself. 6 months later, I got offered a position most engineers would kill for, a relocation package to lead a project in Europe. It was the kind of opportunity that could change a career forever. When I told Ethan, his reaction wasn't excitement. His face fell. "Long distance, Nat, you know how that ends. Lila tried it with her ex. Before me, it ruined them. I can't go through that again." He said it like the word Europe was a threat. So I did something I still regret. I declined the offer. I told myself I was choosing love, choosing us. But looking back, it was the first time I chose fear over growth. For a while, things went back to normal. We had our routines, weekend hikes, late-night takeout, Netflix marathons that blurred 1 month into the next. I thought peace had returned. But cracks always find their way through comfort. It started small. Ethan would mention Lila in passing. "She just got back from Bali," or "She posted this hilarious meme today." Then came the late-night texts. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. to the soft buzz of his phone lighting up our bedroom. He'd glance at me, half asleep, and mumble, "Just catching up with Lila. She can't sleep either." Each time my stomach twisted a little tighter. One night, curiosity overpowered restraint. I looked at his screen when he left it face up on the counter. The message said, "Miss our adventures." My chest went cold. That single winking emoji told me everything I needed to know and everything I didn't want to believe. The next morning, I tried to handle it like an adult. No shouting, no accusations. I poured us both coffee and said quietly, "Ethan, those texts from Lila, they make me uncomfortable. If we're serious, maybe it's time to set some boundaries, like blocking her." He stared at me like I'd said something absurd. Then he laughed. "You can't expect me to block my ex. We're still friends." He said it with that smug little half smile he used when he thought he was being rational and I was being emotional. "It's not a big deal," he continued, setting down his mug hard enough to make it clink. "Lila and I have history, sure, but it's platonic now. You're acting insecure, Nat. If you trusted me, this wouldn't even be an issue." I remember sitting there, staring at my reflection in the dark swirl of coffee, the steam fading between us. It wasn't the words that hurt most, it was the tone. Dismissive, like my feelings were an inconvenience he'd outgrown. "Friends," I repeated softly, keeping my voice even. He nodded, smugly satisfied that he'd won whatever debate he thought this was. I smiled faintly and said, "Then be friends." He blinked confused. Maybe he expected me to cry or fight, but I didn't. Instead, I rinsed my cup, grabbed my bag, and left for work. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when you realize the person you've been fighting for stopped fighting for you a long time ago. At my desk, while lines of code scrolled across the screen, I thought about all the choices I'd made for him, the missed promotion, the rent I paid, the nights I stayed awake cheering him up. I thought about how easily he had brushed it all off with the word insecure. By lunch, the decision was made. There would be no screaming breakup, no emotional implosion, just silence, the kind that shakes the foundation of someone's pride. That night, Ethan was on the couch laughing at something on his phone, probably another meme from her. I sat beside him pretending to scroll too, but what I was actually doing was deleting every photo, every post, every trace of us online. The laughter from his phone blurred into static in my ears as I clicked remove tag delete, album archive memories. By the time he looked up, I was smiling faintly again. He didn't notice the subtle difference. He never did. Later, as he fell asleep, I opened my work email. The subject line from my boss still sat there. Promotion still available if you reconsider. My fingers hovered over the keyboard only a second before I typed, "I accept. I'm ready to relocate." When I hit send, I felt something like freedom for the first time in years. The next morning, the sun came through the blinds and Ethan was already awake, scrolling on his phone. "Hey, weird question," he said. "Why did you delete all our photos on Instagram?" I shrugged, sipping my coffee. Just felt like a fresh start. He frowned. "Are you mad at me?" I smiled again, this time genuine. Not at all. He didn't know what that meant. He wouldn't not until later. By evening, when he texted me, "Why are you ignoring me?" I was already packing my suitcase. When the zipper closed, I took one last look around the apartment we'd built together, the plant he'd forgotten to water, the photo frames now face down on the shelf, the couch where we used to talk until sunrise. Then I snapped a picture of my boarding pass and sent it to him. No caption, no explanation, just proof that I was leaving. By the time he saw it, my phone was already on airplane mode. And for the first time, so was my heart. I didn't cry on the flight. Not once. Not when the plane lifted through the clouds. Not when the city I'd lived in for years shrank beneath me like a bad memory. I thought I'd feel heartbreak, but what I felt was relief, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. When I landed in Prague, the air felt different, crisper, cleaner, untouched by everything I'd been suffocating in. My boss had arranged temporary housing near the company's European branch. The apartment was small, but full of light, with tall windows that opened to a narrow street of cobblestones and morning chatter. I dropped my suitcase, sat on the bare wooden floor, and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because freedom felt absurdly foreign. For the first few days, I lived like a ghost. I went to work, learned everyone's names, smiled at small talk. But at night, I lay awake, replaying every conversation I'd had with Ethan. "Nat, you're overreacting. It's just friendship. If you trusted me..." Those phrases looped in my head like broken code until eventually I started to debug them in my mind, question by question, excuse by excuse. By the end of week 1, the grief turned into analysis. And by week 2, analysis turned into purpose. On the second Friday after work, I sat in a cafe that overlooked the river. I opened my phone for the first time in days. Hundreds of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, texts. "Ethan. What's going on, Ethan? Why are you doing this, Ethan? You can't just walk away." Then the last one, "Ethan. You're seriously leaving the country over what, Lila?" I didn't reply. Instead, I archived the entire thread, changed my number, and blocked him everywhere. My life wasn't a group project anymore. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. But karma, I learned, doesn't rush, it waits. At work, I threw myself into projects. The new office was everything my old one wasn't: diverse, dynamic, demanding. I led a small engineering team on an AI system that detected fraud patterns in financial data. My manager was a straightforward Czech woman named Clara, who spoke 5 languages and never wasted words. When she congratulated me on a flawless presentation, it felt like a small victory I could actually claim for myself. One evening as we packed up, she asked, "You came alone, right? No partner waiting?" I smiled faintly. Not anymore. She nodded with understanding that didn't need translation. "Then you'll do well here. Freedom suits you." The following weekend, I explored the city. I walked across Charles Bridge at dawn when the statues glowed bronze in the early light and street musicians were just setting up. I watched the river flow beneath and thought about how people always chase the illusion of permanence in love. But maybe love isn't supposed to last forever. Maybe it's supposed to teach you how to choose yourself when it doesn't. Back at the apartment, I made a small ritual. Every morning before work, I'd stand by the window, sip coffee, and write down one thing I refused to carry anymore. Guilt, fear. The habit of explaining myself to people who never listened. By the end of the first month, I'd filled an entire notebook. Still, memories had a way of sneaking in. Sometimes when my phone buzzed with a new message, I'd half expect to see his name again. But it was never Ethan, and that was the best part. Around that time, one of my teammates invited me to a group dinner. That's when I met Adam. He wasn't like Ethan, no grand gestures or loud charisma. Adam was quiet confidence, the kind of man who listened before speaking. A graphic designer with a dry sense of humor and eyes that actually paid attention. During dinner, while everyone debated which Czech beer was best, he asked me, "You've been here a while, but you don't sound like you've adjusted yet. You still measure everything in miles, not kilometers." I laughed softly. Old habits. I'm still learning what home means. He tilted his head. Sometimes it's just a feeling, not a place. That sentence stuck with me for weeks. Back in my apartment that night, I scrolled through social media for the first time since leaving home. Ethan's profile still existed, still public, still curated. His latest post was a photo of him and Lila at a rooftop bar. Her arm around him captioned, "Nothing beats old friends who truly get you." Hundreds of likes. A pang of irritation flickered, but it didn't hurt, not the way it once would have. If anything, I almost pitied him. He still needed an audience. I'd stopped needing witnesses. As weeks turned into months, silence became my favorite sound. Everywhere I went, the tram rides, the grocery lines, the quiet cafes, I caught glimpses of who I used to be. The woman who apologized too easily, forgave too quickly, and believed love meant endurance. Now I saw it differently. Endurance without respect isn't love, it's self-erasure. By the end of my third month abroad, the promotion that once felt terrifying now felt earned. My name started circulating in company emails as the woman who saved the project. Colleagues sought my advice. My new life had structure, stability, and peace, everything Ethan once called boring. Then one night, just as I was about to fall asleep, my phone buzzed with an email notification from an address I didn't recognize. Subject: "Please read this." The message began, "Hey Nat, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Things haven't been great lately. I really miss what we had. Lila's been complicated. I should have listened to you." I stared at the screen for a long minute. The irony was poetic. He'd finally used the word complicated for the woman he once defended so fiercely. Without replying, I clicked archive. Then I shut off my phone and turned to the window. Outside, the city glowed softly under the street lamps. Somewhere distant music floated up from the riverfront. I smiled, whispering to myself, "You said she was just a friend. I said be friends. Looks like you got exactly what you wanted." Then I closed the curtains and went to sleep, finally unbothered, finally free. By the time spring arrived, Prague had stopped feeling like an escape and started feeling like a home. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and rain, and the tram bells outside my apartment became a kind of music. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up anxious about someone else's moods. I woke up to my own. My days followed a rhythm now. Early morning coffee by the window, coding sprints with my team, lunch by the river with Clara, my blunt but oddly affectionate boss. She teased me once. "You're always working, Natalie. You need a hobby before your computer becomes your boyfriend." I smiled. "Maybe I'll get a real one someday." She laughed. "A real boyfriend or a real hobby?" "Maybe both," I said, half joking. It was strange how healing didn't come in waves. It came in micro moments. The first time I laughed without remembering Ethan. The first time I cooked dinner just for me, not for us. The first time I realized that silence in the apartment didn't mean loneliness, it meant peace. One Saturday, I joined a small expat group for a weekend hike just outside the city. That's where I ran into Adam again, the designer I'd met at the team dinner months ago. He was carrying an old film camera, wearing the kind of smile that made you forget time zones. He caught up beside me on the trail. "You're the software engineer who never takes breaks, right? And you're the guy who still uses a camera older than both of us," I teased. He grinned. Some things are worth keeping old school. We talked the whole hike about everything from our favorite cities to how strange it feels to start over somewhere new. There was no flirting, just an easy rhythm that reminded me what connection was supposed to feel like. When the group stopped at a lookout point, Adam pointed his camera toward the horizon. "Smile," he said. I hesitated. "I don't really—" "Not for me," he interrupted gently. "For yourself." He clicked the shutter. The wind caught my hair, and for a brief second I felt like I existed outside of anyone's story but my own. That night, as I uploaded the day's photos to my phone, I noticed how different I looked, lighter. Somehow eyes unburdened. I thought back to the woman who once stayed up until 3 a.m., rewriting someone else's resume, while her own dreams sat unopened in her inbox. That woman felt like a ghost from another life. Still, ghosts like to visit. Every now and then, someone from back home would message me, "Hey, heard you moved abroad. Ethan's been not great." Or, "He's been posting weird stuff about breakups. Are you two okay?" I never replied. I didn't need to. But curiosity, it's a stubborn thing. One evening, after a long day at work, I caved and looked at his profile again. The difference was startling. Gone was the polished, confident Ethan I remembered. He'd gone from gym selfies and cocktail bars to blurry photos with cryptic captions like, "Some people only love you when you're useful." The comment section was filled with sympathy emojis from mutual friends, but I could read between the lines. He was unraveling. And then there she was, Lila, tagging him in photos, posting vague quotes about fake people. In one post she wrote, "He promised stability but couldn't even manage honesty." The irony almost made me laugh. I shut my laptop and whispered, "Karma doesn't miss." A week later, Clara pulled me into her office. "You've done well here," she said, handing me a folder. Inside was an offer for a permanent role plus a raise. "I want you to lead the next AI project. You've earned it." Something in me stilled. I remembered the night I'd turned down that first European offer because Ethan said long distance would ruin us. Now here I was, thriving without him, offered the exact kind of life I once sacrificed. "Thank you," I said softly. "I won't waste it." That evening, the office held a small celebration. Champagne laughter, a playlist full of bad 90s hits. Adam was there too, leaning casually against the counter, watching me toast with the team. When the music softened, he walked over. "So the promotion girl gets promoted again," he said, smiling. "You planning to celebrate?" "Maybe," I said, "if I can find someone who doesn't mind my terrible dancing." He laughed. "I'm not great either, but I'm brave." He extended a hand. "Come on, Natalie, just one song." So we danced badly, joyfully. No romance, not yet. Just a reminder that life could be fun again. But peace, I've learned, doesn't erase the past. It only quiets it until something knocks again. That knock came 2 nights later. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. For a second, I almost ignored it, but the country code, my old one, made me freeze. I answered. "Natalie." It was Tom, one of our mutual friends. "Hey, sorry to call out of nowhere," he said awkwardly. Ethan's not doing great." I stayed silent. He's been posting about Lila. Apparently she left him. Took some money, too. It's kind of a mess." A pause. Then softly, "He keeps saying he should have appreciated you more." I stared out the window. The city below sparkled alive. My reflection stared back, steady, composed. "I hope he learns from it," I said finally. "But that's not my story anymore." Tom exhaled, relieved, maybe a little ashamed. "You sound different." "I am," I replied and hung up. That night, I went for a walk along the river. The air was cool, the streetlights shimmering across the water like scattered glass. I thought about everything I'd endured, the manipulation disguised as love, the way Ethan once said I was too predictable. Maybe stability isn't boring. Maybe it's the bravest thing a person can choose. I stopped at the bridge, closed my eyes, and whispered into the wind. "You were right about one thing, Ethan. Long distance does change people." Then I smiled to myself. It just didn't ruin me. Summer came quietly that year, warm and golden over the city. I'd been abroad for nearly 9 months, and by then, the rhythm of my new life had taken hold completely. The past felt like an old film, grainy, distant, playing in another language I no longer spoke. Work was thriving. I had been promoted officially to project lead, mentoring younger developers and collaborating across countries. My team was my small family now, diverse, chaotic, loyal. We worked hard, laughed harder. I even found myself smiling on Monday morning, something I once thought impossible. But peace doesn't mean the past disappears. Sometimes karma just takes its time to circle back. It was late on a Thursday when I got a message from Emily, one of our mutual friends from back home. We hadn't spoken since before I left. "Hey Nat, sorry for the random text, but have you seen Ethan's posts lately? You might want to." I ignored it at first. Old curiosity is dangerous. But hours later, as I sat in my quiet apartment, I gave in and searched his profile. The man on my screen barely resembled the Ethan I'd once loved. His usually perfect smile looked forced. He'd gone from posting photos of fancy dinners and weekend trips to vague rants about betrayal. Some people pretend to care just to watch you fall. Be careful who you trust. Even loyalty has an expiration date. Scrolling further, I saw her Lila tagged in older posts, smiling beside him at some rooftop bar. Her captions dripping with irony. "Love that feels like adventure. Hashtag real connections." But then the tone shifted. Her next few posts were cryptic. "Never loan money to a man who confuses chaos for passion. Turns out being fun doesn't pay rent." And then suddenly nothing. Both of their accounts went quiet. I should have stopped there, but something in me, call it closure, call it curiosity, needed the rest of the story. So I messaged Emily back. "Okay, I looked. What happened?" She replied almost instantly. Apparently, Lila drained his savings. He lent her money for some travel project, and she vanished. Rumor is she cheated on him with some guy she met online. He's a mess, Nat. Quit his job, moved back in with his parents. Everyone's talking about it. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her message, feeling a strange mix of emotions: sadness, vindication, disbelief, pity. The irony was brutal. He'd once told me I was too predictable, that Lila understood the fun side of him. Now he was living the very instability he'd claimed to avoid. But I didn't gloat. That wasn't my style anymore. I simply whispered to the quiet room, "You wanted freedom, Ethan. Hope it was worth it." Weeks later, I ran into Adam again at a local art gallery. He'd just finished designing a campaign for a travel brand and was showcasing his work. The gallery was filled with soft music, warm light, and people sipping wine while pretending to understand abstract art. He spotted me near one of his prints, a photograph of the city skyline during sunset. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, smiling. "I told you I'd find a hobby," I replied. "Apparently it's pretending I understand photography." He laughed. "You don't have to understand it. Just feel it." Then quieter. "You look peaceful, happier than last time." I hesitated, then nodded. "I am. Maybe for the first time in a long while." He handed me a glass of wine, and we stood there in comfortable silence. There was no rush, no pressure, just presence. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's the quiet ease of realizing someone finally sees you, not the version you perform. One rainy Sunday morning, I got an unexpected email. Subject from Ethan. My first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity won again. I opened it. "Hey, Nat, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I see now how much I hurt you. I thought I was chasing excitement, but it turns out stability was what I needed all along. I hope you're doing okay. I still think about you sometimes." I read it twice, then a third time. The words should have made me angry, or at least nostalgic. Instead, they made me feel nothing. That's when I realized forgiveness isn't something you give to the other person. It's something you give yourself when they no longer have the power to affect your heartbeat. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I went out for a walk. The rain had softened into a drizzle, and the cobblestones shimmered under the streetlights. I passed by a small bookstore, its windows fogged from warmth inside. On impulse, I stepped in. A jazz record was playing low and slow. The woman behind the counter smiled. "Looking for something special? Just something honest," I said. I left with a poetry book about rebirth and resilience. On the first page, the author had written, "Some storms come to clear your sky, not drown you." That night, I copied that line into my notebook, the one I used to write what I'd let go of. Next to it, I added one more word: Ethan. From then on, the messages from home started to fade. Emily stopped mentioning him. Tom stopped trying to mediate. It was as if the world had collectively decided to let the story end. Adam and I grew closer slowly, naturally. He never asked about my past in detail. He just made space for it without demanding explanation. One evening, as we watched the city lights flicker from his rooftop, he asked, "What made you stay here instead of going back?" I thought for a moment before answering. Because leaving wasn't the escape, I said. It was the beginning. He smiled softly. Then I'm glad you began here. For once I believed him. Not as a line, not as a promise, just as truth. But life, of course, loves its symmetry. Just when I thought the chapter was finally closed, the past knocked one last time, loud and desperate. It was past midnight when my phone rang with another unfamiliar number, the country code again home. Against my better judgment, I answered. A shaky voice said, "Nat, it's Ethan." I froze. He sounded different. Deflated, hollow. "I'm sorry to call like this," he continued, voice cracking. I needed someone to talk to. Everything's gone. Lila took the rest of my savings, blocked me everywhere. I have nothing left. You were the only person who ever actually cared about me. For a long moment I said nothing, just listened to the rain outside. Then I said quietly, "Ethan, you made your choice, and I made mine." He sniffled. "Can't we start over?" "Please, I'll change. I'll make it right this time." I exhaled slowly. "You said blocking Lila would be controlling, but you blocked me when I left. You called me predictable. Now you want the peace you once mocked. I hope you find it, but it won't be with me." Before he could answer, I ended the call. Then I blocked the number. As I stood by the window, I watched the reflection of the rain streaking down the glass and realized something powerful. I hadn't just moved cities. I'd moved on. I thought that phone call would be the last echo of my past. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, just as the city was sliding into autumn, the ghost started knocking again, this time louder, uglier, and far more desperate. It started with an email from unknown@somebusinessdomain.com. Subject, please, Natalie. Just hear me out. The message began simply, "I know you probably hate me, but I don't know who else to reach out to. Lila left me broke. I've been trying to fix things, but nothing's working. You always believed in me. Please, can we just talk?" I hovered over the trash icon, but something stopped me. Not sympathy, curiosity. It was astonishing how he still managed to twist the story into him being the victim. I didn't reply. 5 hours later, another message appeared. Then another. Each one messier, more emotional, more erratic. By the third email, he was practically begging. "I've lost everything. I just need someone to listen. Please, I'll make it right this time, I swear." That night I dreamt about the old apartment, the smell of his cologne, the muted light on the walls, his phone buzzing at 2 a.m. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, realizing that even from a continent away, some people will still try to haunt you if you let them. A few nights later, I was working late, lost in code, when my phone lit up again. Unknown number, local time, 2:07 a.m. I shouldn't have answered, but the part of me that wanted final closure did. "Hello." For a second, all I heard was breathing. Then his voice fragile and slurred. "Nat, it's me." I closed my eyes. "Ethan, it's 2 a.m. I know, he mumbled. I needed to hear your voice. I'm sorry. God, I was so stupid. I shouldn't have. I thought she was different." There was a pause, long and heavy. The sound of him crying came through the line. "She hit me once," he said suddenly. Threw a glass, took my card, drained my account. I deserved it, didn't I? For everything I did to you. For a moment, my chest tightened. Not out of love, but from the sheer weight of how broken he sounded. Then, just as quickly, I remembered the night he'd smirked and said, "You can't expect me to block my ex. We're just friends." That memory sobered any trace of pity. "You don't deserve abuse, Ethan," I said calmly. "But you do need to face what you created. I can't save you. I'm not asking you to save me," he pleaded. "I just miss you. We were good together." "No," I replied. "I was good to you. You were careless with that." He went silent, then whispered, "You really hate me, don't you?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "No, Ethan, I don't hate you. I just don't care anymore." And with that, I hung up. The next day, my phone was full of missed calls and voicemails. Some were from him, some from unfamiliar numbers that turned out to be mutual friends. "Tom. He's in bad shape, Nat. Maybe just talk to him once, Emily. You're being cold. He's trying. You were the stable one. Help him get back on his feet." Even his sister texted me. "Ethan's falling apart. He says he can't eat. You're the only one who ever understood him. Please just call." It was surreal how everyone still expected the woman who'd been abandoned to come back as a savior. That was the story they all loved, the patient, forgiving woman fixing the man who broke her. But I wasn't that woman anymore. So I did the only thing that truly terrified them. I stayed silent. Days turned into weeks, and his attempts grew darker. A text popped up one afternoon while I was in a meeting. "I saw your photo with that guy, so you just moved on like that. Guess I never mattered." Then another an hour later. "I hope he knows he's just the rebound." Then one more right before midnight. "You'll regret this." I didn't even flinch. Instead, I blocked his number again, reported the email address, and changed my contact info at work. The version of me who used to explain and justify was gone. I wasn't a chapter in his redemption arc. Still, karma isn't done until it balances everything. A few weeks later, Emily messaged again, but this time her tone was different. "You probably don't care, but Ethan's been arrested. Something about unpaid loans. Apparently, Lila used his name on some documents before she disappeared. He's been trying to track her down, but no one's seen her." I read it twice, then slowly set my phone down. There was no satisfaction, no thrill of revenge. Just a quiet truth: when you play with fire long enough, you eventually burn alone. That night, I stood by my window and watched the lights shimmer over the river. Below, the world went on, lovers holding hands, music from a nearby cafe, laughter echoing between buildings. Life didn't pause for other people's chaos. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it slightly, whispering into the night, to peace that doesn't need an apology. The next morning, I met Adam for brunch. He noticed the faint circles under my eyes. "Rough night," I smiled. "Not anymore." He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, "Whoever hurt you must regret it now." I looked at him, sunlight spilling across his face. "Maybe, but regret's not my business anymore." He nodded, understanding without pushing. "You're stronger than you think, Natalie." Maybe, I said, smiling faintly, or maybe I finally learned the right kind of silence. That evening, when I got home, I went through my old photos, the ones I'd kept hidden on a hard drive I never opened. There was one of Ethan and me smiling on some long-forgotten vacation, his arm around me, both of us sunburned and naive. I stared at it for a moment, then hit delete for the final time. It didn't hurt. It didn't even sting. It just felt like closing a window that had been letting in cold air for too long. 3 months later, I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Ethan had moved to another city, living quietly off social media, trying to rebuild. I wished him well, silently, privately, like a prayer you no longer need answered. Because that's what healing really is. Not forgiveness, not revenge, just distance with peace. By the time winter came around, everything about my life felt different. Lighter, clearer, quieter, in the best way possible. I'd moved into a new apartment overlooking the river, one with wide glass doors that let the morning sun pour in. On weekends, I baked bread or went hiking with Adam. We weren't rushing anything. We didn't need to. Peace had a rhythm now, and I'd learned how to live in its tempo. One evening in December, as I was making tea, a notification pinged on my laptop: Lisa's wedding. Zoom link reminder. Lisa had been one of the few mutual friends who'd stayed neutral through all the drama. I hadn't seen her in person since before I left, but she'd always checked in quietly, respectfully. Of course I planned to attend. The next night, I dressed simply: white sweater, gold earrings, hair down. Nothing dramatic, just me. I logged into the call early. There were familiar faces in the grid of boxes: Emily, Tom, some old coworkers. And then my breath caught. Ethan. He was there. His camera flickered on, revealing a man I barely recognized. Gaunt, pale, with unshaven stubble and hollow eyes. The background behind him looked cluttered, dim light clothes piled on a couch, empty bottles in view. For a split second, our eyes met through the screens. He froze. I could see at that moment of shock, disbelief, maybe even regret. But I didn't flinch. I smiled politely, like one does at an old colleague, then turned my camera slightly so that Adam, sitting across the table preparing dinner, was visible in the background. He caught my glance and winked softly before returning to chopping vegetables. The message was clear: my life had moved on, and it was good. The ceremony began. Music played softly through tinny laptop speakers, and everyone clapped as Lisa appeared in her gown. She looked radiant. The whole moment was filled with joy and small laughter. I let myself enjoy it, the simplicity, the sincerity. It was beautiful. Until my phone buzzed with a private message. "Ethan, can we talk, please? Just 1 minute." My pulse stayed steady. I ignored it. A few moments later, another ping. "Ethan, you owe me at least that." Owe him. That word "owe" hit me like a flashback. I remembered all the nights I'd comforted him after failures, all the sacrifices I'd made while he needed space. The irony was almost poetic. I exhaled slowly and typed one sentence. You had 3 years to talk. I listened then. Not anymore. I hit enter and turned my camera off for a second just to breathe. But it didn't end there. Minutes later, Lisa's voice filled the call. Before we end, if anyone wants to give a small message to the bride and groom. And before I could react, Ethan unmuted himself. I just want to say he started voice trembling. Seeing everyone happy tonight makes me realize how much I've messed up. Some of us hurt people who actually cared about us, and we don't realize it until it's too late. The air in the chat went awkwardly still. A few people shifted in their seats. Then he added, looking directly into his camera, some people deserve better from me, and I hope they're happy now, even if it's not with me. His voice cracked on the last word. I stayed silent, staring at my screen. Not angry, not emotional, just detached. When he finally muted Lisa, bless her, smiled gently and said, "Thank you, Ethan," before moving on quickly. After the ceremony ended, I lingered a bit in the virtual after-party. People were chatting, toasting, laughing. Then another notification popped up, private breakout room invite from Ethan. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But a part of me wanted true closure, not the half-healed version, not the polite avoidance. The kind where you look a ghost in the eye and it finally stops haunting you. So I clicked join. His face filled the screen. Up close, he looked exhausted. "Natalie," he said quietly, "please don't leave." I didn't answer. He rubbed his face. "I don't even know where to start. Lila ruined me. She stole from me, humiliated me, disappeared. Everything fell apart. I lost my job, my apartment. I'm living with my parents again." He gave a weak laugh that turned bitter. "You must be loving this." I tilted my head. "No, Ethan. I don't love watching anyone suffer, but I'm also not responsible for cleaning up the mess they created." He leaned forward, eyes red. "You don't understand. You were the only one who ever cared. You were steady, kind, real. I just didn't see it. Please, can we start over? I'll move there if I have to. I'll do anything." For a moment, the silence stretched between us like a test. The old Natalie, the one who used to fix, to comfort, to rationalize, might have softened. But that woman didn't live here anymore. "Ethan," I said gently but firmly, "you once told me I was predictable, that I made life too safe, too boring. You wanted excitement. You got it. And now you're calling the piece you left love. But love isn't a place you return to when everything else collapses. It's what you protect while it's still standing." His lip trembled. "You're really with someone else now, aren't you?" "Yes," I said simply, "and he doesn't need fixing." He stared at me for a long moment, something desperate flickering behind his eyes. "I'll change, Nat. Just give me a chance." "No," I replied softly. "You had all your chances. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity." He looked down defeated. "You're colder than I remember." I shook my head. "No, just healed." Before he could answer, I clicked leave room. When I rejoined the main call, Lisa was thanking everyone. Adam walked into frame with 2 glasses of wine. "How was it?" he asked, noticing my calm expression. "Closure," I said. "Nothing more." He handed me a glass. "To closure, then." We clinked lightly, and I smiled, not triumphantly, just peacefully. Later that night, after the call ended and the city went quiet, I stood by my balcony. The air was crisp stars reflecting in the river below. I thought about all the versions of me that had existed, the girl who stayed, the woman who left, the one who learned how to be alone, and the one who finally found peace again. Ethan's words echoed faintly in my mind. "You're colder than I remember." Maybe he was right, but maybe after everything, being cold just meant I'd finally stop burning myself to keep someone else warm. I took a deep breath, smiled into the night, and whispered, "You said you wanted freedom, Ethan. I found mine." And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted, I felt whole. My fiancé said, "I'm embarrassed to introduce you to my colleagues." I said, "Fair." Then I packed my things. He didn't expect me to actually mean it. Hey viewers, before we get into the story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you enjoy stories about love, truth, and the moment people show who they really are. My name is Robin Carter. I'm 35 years old, and this is the story of how a single word ended what I thought was going to be the rest of my life. Ryan and I met at a networking event back in 2019. He was charming, confident, without trying sharp, without being cold. I remember the way he smiled when he spoke about his work. He was a management consultant climbing the partner track at a prestigious firm. I worked as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company. Solid pay, decent balance, good team. I made around $120,000 a year, nothing groundbreaking, but I was proud of it. Ryan was making more, around $150,000 when we met, but it never seemed to matter. At least not at first. The beginning was light. He introduced me to everyone with a kind of warmth that made me feel seen. "This is Robin. She manages big tech projects, keeps teams sane when everything's falling apart," he'd say proudly. I'd laugh and tease him for overselling me. He'd kiss my cheek and whisper, "You deserve to be oversold." Back then I believed him. We were together for 3 years, engaged for 1.5. The wedding was set, deposits paid. Families involved, save the dates sent. My mom had already picked her dress. His mother called weekly about the seating chart. Everything was moving like clockwork. But then things started changing slowly, almost invisibly at first. It's funny how you don't notice when someone stops admiring you and starts measuring you. Ryan's promotion came through about a year before the engagement. His world expanded, new clients, new dinners, new people. And suddenly our conversations felt strategic. He'd mention colleagues' wives or girlfriends. Claire's husband just made partner at his law firm. Marcus's girlfriend launched her second startup. They're such a power couple. The words power couple stuck in my head like a thorn. I didn't think much of it then. I thought he was just sharing. But over time it became clear he wasn't sharing. He was comparing. He started encouraging me to push further. "Robin, you could easily make VP if you just went after it." I'd shrug. "Maybe. But I actually like my role. My team's great. The pay's solid. Why chase a title I don't want?" He'd sigh, not in anger, but disappointment, the quiet kind that says, "You're not trying hard enough for me to be proud of you." At first, I told myself he was just ambitious, that he wanted the best for me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about support. It was about optics. Then came the party. A networking cocktail night hosted by his firm, just a casual gathering, he said. He wanted me to come. "You should meet my team. It'll be good for you to get to know them." I almost said no. These events weren't really my thing. But he looked so eager, so convincing that I agreed. I spent hours getting ready. New dress, hair curled just right, the kind of outfit that says I belong here even when you're not sure you do. The event was crowded, all high heels, expensive colognes, and champagne laughter. Ryan's colleagues were mostly in their early 30s, all bright-eyed, fast-talking, obsessed with deals and deadlines. I smiled, shook hands, and tried to remember names. Ryan introduced me to everyone with polite efficiency. "This is Robin, my fiancé," he'd say. Then, almost immediately, pivot the conversation toward business. Every time I tried to join in the discussion, would glide right past me: mergers, market growth, venture capital. A language I could understand, but one that didn't seem to want me speaking it. There was a moment I'll never forget. He introduced me to Claire, one of his colleagues' girlfriends, a cardiac surgeon. She asked what I did. "I manage software development projects," I said, smiling. "Mostly infrastructure upgrades and systems migrations." Before I could finish explaining, Ryan jumped in, laughing lightly. "It's basically tech management stuff. Not as exciting as saving lives, right, Claire?" He didn't even realize what he'd done, how he'd turned my career into a punchline to flatter someone else. I laughed it off then. But inside, I felt something twist. It wasn't the first time he'd done it. Just the first time I couldn't ignore it. After 3 hours of polite small talk and forced smiles, we went home. I kicked off my heels, started removing my earrings, and that's when he said it. "Did you see how Claire looked at you?" I frowned. "No, why?" "She was judging you. Ryan." They were nice. They were being polite. It was obvious. "You don't fit in with that crowd." I turned to look at him. "I don't need to fit in with that crowd." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "It's not about need, Robin. It's about image, about how we look together. I'm trying to build something here, and what I interrupted. I'm holding you back." He hesitated, just long enough for the silence to sting. Then he said it quietly, almost like a confession. "I'm embarrassed to introduce you to them." That word, embarrassed. He didn't say ashamed or disappointed. He said embarrassed. Like I was something inconvenient, a misstep he had to explain away. He said it calmly, like he was stating a simple fact, then turned away as if the conversation was over. I stood there in silence, earrings still in my hand, trying to breathe. He climbed into bed, and I stayed awake all night staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing even out as mine caught in my throat. It wasn't anger I felt, not even heartbreak, it was recognition. Because suddenly every little moment, every sigh, every correction, every comparison made sense. This wasn't the first time he'd been embarrassed by me. It was just the first time he'd been honest enough to say it out loud. And by morning, I already knew what I had to do. When the sun came up, I hadn't closed my eyes once. My body felt heavy, but my mind was electric, replaying every second of the night before every word, every look I had brushed off as nothing. He was embarrassed. Not by something I said, not by something I did by me. I got up quietly, careful not to wake him, and made coffee I couldn't drink. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge and the echo of his words in my head. I stared at the ring on my finger. It felt like an ornament from a life I no longer wanted. That morning I started remembering. Every time he'd corrected me mid-sentence at a dinner party, every time he'd said, "That's not how you explain it, babe, let me." Every look he gave when I made a joke that didn't land with his work friends. At the time I thought he was trying to help me fit in. Now I knew he'd been managing me like I was a PR liability he needed to polish. I thought about the time his coworker's wife asked me what I did for fun. Before I could answer, Ryan said, "Oh, she mostly just relaxes. She's not really into the career grind." He meant it as a tease, but the way he said it, dismissive, minimizing it, burned. At home, he'd reassure me that I was amazing. But out there, I was background noise. I remember one night months ago, I came home excited after finishing a project that had been dragging for weeks. "Ryan," I said, "we finally implemented the new security system. My team worked all weekend and it's running flawlessly." He didn't look up from his laptop. "That's good," he said, "but have you thought about moving to a bigger company? One with more visibility." Visibility. That word again. As if my life was a stage and my worth was measured by the size of the audience. By 8 a.m., I had made my decision. I wasn't going to beg him to see my value. I wasn't going to climb a ladder I didn't want just to earn his approval. But still, I didn't want to fight. I wanted closure. If he saw me as an embarrassment, I needed to hear him admit it when he was awake. So I waited. When he came into the kitchen, he smiled like nothing had happened, kissed my cheek, poured his coffee. It was almost funny. I wondered if he remembered what he'd said. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied. We sat across from each other, both pretending everything was fine. He scrolled through emails on his phone while I stared at the ring again glinting in the morning light like a taunt. "You okay?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah," I lied, because the truth was too big to fit into that single moment. Later, while he showered, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. The framed photos, the shared books, the half-packed wedding folder on the dresser, all symbols of a future I couldn't walk into anymore. We were supposed to be married in 4 months. My dress was already ordered. Our families had plans. People had flights booked. But how do you walk down the aisle towards someone who's ashamed to stand beside you? I called my best friend Laura. She picked up groggy. "Robin, it's 7 a.m. What's wrong?" I told her everything. The party. The sentence, the silence that followed. There was a pause. Then she said quietly, "You've known this for a while, haven't you?" My throat tightened. "Yeah." "Then don't waste another year waiting for him to change." I didn't cry. Not yet. Not when I told her. Not even when she offered to drive over. The tears came later when I realized she was right. I'd been waiting for him to wake up one morning and decide I was enough. But love doesn't work like that. Once someone's embarrassed by you, it's over. You just haven't walked out yet. That day I went to work and acted normal. My team didn't notice anything. I smiled, joked, sent emails, ran meetings. But inside, everything felt like static. I kept hearing his voice calm, indifferent. "I'm embarrassed to introduce you to them." Like it was a reasonable thing to say to someone you claim to love. By the time I got home, I was done pretending. He was on the couch, laptop open, typing something with that same focused expression he always had, like I was just part of the furniture. "Can we talk?" I asked. He looked up surprised. "Sure, what's wrong?" The words formed in my throat, sharp and steady. "I've been thinking about what you said last night." His expression flickered just for a second before he masked it. "What do you mean?" "That you're embarrassed to introduce me to your colleagues." He set his laptop aside. "Robin, I didn't mean it like that. You're taking it No, I interrupted. You meant it exactly like that. And that's okay. I needed to hear it. He frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying you finally told the truth. That night wasn't the breakup. That came later. But it was the moment I knew beyond any doubt that we weren't going to make it to the wedding. Because once someone says they're embarrassed by you, there's no coming back. You can forgive almost anything, anger, mistakes, betrayal, but not shame. Shame poisons love from the inside. And by morning, I knew my next step. It wouldn't be dramatic. It would just be final. The next morning felt deceptively calm. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds, dust floating in slow motion. Ryan sat at the counter, reading emails like any other day. It struck me how normal the end of something can look. No shouting, no tears, just two people drinking coffee while their relationship quietly dies. I watched him for a long time, trying to remember what I'd loved about him. His focus, maybe, the way he could command a room. But all I saw now was distance, someone who'd already decided what I was worth. He looked up. You're quiet. I'm thinking. About what? About us. He set down his mug slowly. Okay, what about us? I took a breath. Ryan, do you remember what you said the other night? He frowned. Which part? You said you were embarrassed to introduce me to your colleagues. He blinked. I told you I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? He hesitated. I just meant, you and I move in different circles. You don't understand that kind of environment. I shouldn't have said embarrassed. I was frustrated. Frustrated. Like shame could be rebranded as stress. I nodded slowly. You weren't frustrated. You were honest. You've been embarrassed by me for a long time. That night was just the first time you said it out loud. He sighed. Robin, come on. Every couple has their differences. You're taking one bad moment and turning it into something huge. It is huge, I said quietly, because it tells me exactly how you see me. He shook his head, half laughing like I was being dramatic. You're really going to throw away everything over a word? No, I said. I'm ending it because I finally believe that word. He stared at me, then truly stared, searching my face for weakness. Robin, we have a wedding in 4 months. We've put down deposits. Our families are involved. I know. People will talk. They always do. What are you going to tell them that you broke off an engagement over some misunderstanding? I felt something inside me go still. I'm going to tell them the truth, I said, that I refused to marry someone who was ashamed to stand beside me. He stood up, pacing now. You're not being fair. I've supported you for years. I've paid for half of everything helped you when you were laid off during COVID. And I've supported you too, I cut in, emotionally, patiently, every time you came home angry at your firm, every time you doubted yourself. But this, I gestured between us, this isn't about support, it's about respect. And you don't have any for me left. He rubbed his face with both hands. You're making a mistake. No, I said softly. I'm correcting one. The silence after that was deafening. For a moment I thought he might say something, anything to make me stay. But he just exhaled long and tired and said, You'll regret this. I already did, I whispered, last night. I walked to the bedroom, took off my ring, and placed it on his nightstand. The metal clicked softly, final, deliberate. He followed me to the doorway, eyes red, but no tears. Robin, please don't do this. I have to. I grabbed my coat. Where are you going? To my friend Laura's. I'll stay there for a while. I'll come back for my things later. He looked stunned, like I'd spoken a foreign language. You can't just walk out. I smiled sadly. I'm not walking out, Ryan. You pushed me out months ago. You just finally noticed. I left. It wasn't cinematic, no slammed doors, no storm. Just me, walking down the hallway of our building, hearing my own footsteps echo. When the elevator doors closed, my reflection looked strange, calm, almost relieved. I think part of me had been waiting for this moment even before I knew it. I called my mom from the car. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She asked immediately. Mom, I called off the wedding. A pause. What happened? He said he was embarrassed by me. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, honey. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just said, then don't ever let someone like that back in. That night I stayed at Laura's apartment. She poured wine, handed me her softest blanket, and said nothing for an hour. Just let me sit there in the quiet, feeling everything and nothing at once. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. I think he loved the version of me that made him look balanced. Warm, grounded, not me the person. Laura nodded. He loved the story of you, not the reality. She was right. Ryan didn't want me. He wanted the image of a partner who'd make him look more human, more relatable without being too ordinary. And the moment I stopped fitting that aesthetic, he got embarrassed. I slept for 12 hours that night, the first real sleep I'd had in months. In the morning, I woke up feeling hollow but steady. It was over. And while part of me grieved, another part felt free. Free from comparison, free from performing, free from being someone's accessory in their climb to the top. I knew the next few weeks would be chaos, cancellations, questions, explanations. But I also knew one thing for sure. I would rather start over alone than spend another day with someone who saw me as a liability to their image. Leaving was easy. Staying gone was harder. The first few days felt like standing on a cliff edge. No noise, no motion, just wind and disbelief. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Ryan called, texted, left voicemails. At first I didn't answer. Then I did once. "Robin, please!" His voice cracked over the line. "We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You were clear. You're embarrassed by me. That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect me to leave." He went silent. Then, almost desperate, "You're overreacting. You're ruining both our lives." "No," I said, calm now. "I'm saving mine." I hung up. That was the last time I heard his voice for a week. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, creaky floors, tiny balcony, the kind of place that smelled faintly of paint and possibility. Laura helped me unpack. When she left, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and felt something I hadn't felt in months, quiet. Not the cold, awkward silence of avoidance, but peace. I remember thinking, so this is what it's like to breathe without apologizing for it. Then came the calls, not from Ryan, but from his mother. "Robin." She began, her voice tight with confusion. "Ryan told me you canceled the wedding." "I did. Why would you do that?" "What happened between you two?" I took a slow breath. He said he was embarrassed to introduce me to his colleagues. There was a long pause. Then softly he said that, yes, I'm sure he didn't mean it that way. He's been under so much pressure lately. Maybe, but that doesn't change how he sees me. Her tone shifted, pleading now. "Sweetheart, you've been such a grounding force for him. Don't throw this away over one comment." I smiled bitterly, even though she couldn't see it. That one comment was the truth he'd been avoiding for months. We hung up politely. I knew she meant well, but it didn't change anything. The next day, my own mother called. She didn't ask me to reconsider. She just said, "I'm proud of you." Some people spend their whole lives trying to earn love from someone who will never give it freely. You walked away before you forgot who you were. Her words stayed with me. I wrote them on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom mirror. Walk away before you forget who you are. The practical part came next, the unglamorous aftermath no one prepares you for. Canceling the venue, calling vendors, returning the dress. Each call started the same. "Hi, I'm calling to cancel my wedding booking." Every voice on the other end went soft, some with pity, some with curiosity. "Do you want to reschedule?" one planner asked. "No," I said. "Just cancel. You'll lose most of the deposit." "I know." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry." I thanked her, hung up, and cried for the first time since leaving. Not for him, but for the version of me that had believed so fiercely in us. Days turned into weeks. The constant ache in my chest dulled. The apartment started feeling like home. Mismatched mugs, thrifted couch, soft lamps, instead of sterile chandeliers. I even started sleeping through the night again. Sometimes I'd still wake up expecting to see his shape beside me, but instead there was just the cool space of absence, and strangely, it felt safer than the nights he'd turned away. A week later, Ryan showed up unannounced. I was folding laundry when I heard the knock. When I opened the door, he stood there rumpled, tired, holding flowers. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. He stepped inside, eyes darting around my small apartment like it was foreign territory. "This place is different." "Yeah," I said. "It's mine." He put the flowers down on the counter. "I've been miserable without you. I'm sure you have." "Robin, I said something awful. I was stressed trying to impress my team, and I took it out on you." "No, Ryan," I said gently. "You told the truth. You just didn't expect me to believe you." He looked wounded. "I made a mistake." "You didn't make a mistake," I said softly. "You revealed what was real. You were embarrassed by me. I can't unknow that." He took a step closer. "Can't you forgive me?" "I already did. That's why I'm calm right now." "Then why can't we try again?" Because forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It means release. He stared at me for a long moment, jaw tight. Then he whispered, "You've changed." I smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped performing." He didn't say another word. He just left the flowers on the counter, and walked out. I stood there for a long time, watching the door, listening to the silence settle. Then I took the flowers, carried them to the balcony, and left them there, a small, dying apology in the sunlight. After that, I stopped checking my phone altogether. Ryan's calls faded from daily to occasional to nothing. The silence he left behind didn't hurt. It healed. I started focusing on myself, long walks after work dinners with friends I hadn't seen in years, laughter that didn't feel forced. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't someone's disappointment. I was just me. 2 weeks after that last visit, I thought it was finally over. I had deleted his number, stopped checking for his messages, and started rebuilding my days piece by piece. Then one Friday evening, as I was coming home from work, I saw a car I recognized parked near my building. My stomach dropped. Ryan. He was leaning against his car, still in his suit tie, loosened, holding something behind his back. When he saw me, his expression softened, that same practiced half-smile that used to melt me. Now it just looked like strategy. "Robin," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I sighed. "Ryan, we already did this. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to walk past him and end it right there. But another part, the one that still believed closure could mean peace, gave in. I unlocked my door. 5 minutes. He stepped inside, looking around like he was walking through a museum of someone else's life. The flowers he'd brought last time were gone. My apartment smelled like vanilla and old wood, warm, small mine. He finally pulled his hand from behind his back. Another bouquet. Roses this time. I couldn't help but laugh. "You never used to buy me flowers," I know he said. I should have. He set them on the counter and took a deep breath. "Robin, I've been thinking about everything, about what I said about us. I was wrong." "You were honest," I corrected. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I was insecure. Everyone at work is competing constantly, trying to prove they're worth something. I started measuring myself through other people's eyes, and then I started doing the same to you." His words were polished, almost rehearsed. The kind of speech someone gives when they've had 2 weeks to practice. "Ryan," I said softly, "I don't think you understand. I'm not angry at you anymore. I'm just done." He flinched. "You don't mean that." "I do. You don't get to insult someone's worth and then act surprised when they stop auditioning for your approval." He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw something like fear in his eyes. "You're serious," he whispered. "I was serious when I said yes to marrying you," I said, "and I'm serious now that I'm saying no." He tried again. "We can start over. I'll prove that I'm proud of you. I'll tell everyone at work how lucky I am." I laughed softly. "You can't advertise love, Ryan. It's not a campaign." Silence. Finally, he said almost to himself, "You've changed." "I've remembered who I am," I replied. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You can't just erase 3 years." "I'm not erasing them," I said. "I'm learning from them." That's when his composure cracked. His voice broke low and raw. "I thought we were forever." I met his eyes. Forever isn't supposed to feel like shame. He didn't have an answer. He just nodded slowly, like he was realizing the end had already happened long before this moment. He turned toward the door, paused, then said, "For what it's worth, you were never the problem." "I know," I said. "That's why I could leave." And then he was gone. After he left, I stood by the door staring at the bouquet of roses. The petals were perfect, but I couldn't feel anything. Not anger, not nostalgia. Just peace, a quiet kind that settles into your bones when you finally close the right door. I carried the flowers to the balcony again, set them next to the dying ones, and whispered, "Rest." Over the next few weeks, I found a rhythm again. I went out with friends I hadn't seen in years. I started running in the mornings. I even signed up for a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had time for when Ryan scheduled our weekends like business meetings. At work, my boss called me into his office one afternoon. "Robin," he said, "you've been killing it lately. I wanted to offer you a new role, bigger team, better pay. You'd be perfect for it." For a second, I froze. The old me would have run home to tell Ryan, hoping for validation. The new me just smiled and said thank you. I'd love to. I walked out of his office and sat in my car, realizing something. It wasn't the promotion that made me happy. It was knowing I'd made that decision for myself. 3 months later, I ran into someone from Ryan's firm, Claire the surgeon's girlfriend. I was waiting for coffee when she recognized me. "Robin, right? Ryan's ex-fiancé?" I nodded. That's me. Her face softened. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. Don't be. I said. It was overdue. She looked uncomfortable. He told people it was mutual. I smiled. It was once I made the choice for both of us. She laughed nervously, then said, He's been quieter at work lately. I hope he's doing better, I said honestly. We both deserve peace. She hesitated before adding, You know, he did say something once. He said you were the kindest person he'd ever met. I nodded. That's the thing about kindness, I said. It stays even when love doesn't. When I left the cafe, I walked past the same kind of high-end suits and shiny cars that used to make me feel small. Now they just looked loud. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to measure up to anything. I wasn't impressive. I was enough. It's been 6 months since I left. 6 months since I heard the word embarrassed echo through a room and realized it was the sound of my freedom. The world didn't fall apart. My life didn't collapse. It simply rearranged itself around the truth. My mornings are quiet now. I wake up to sunlight on my face, not the sound of someone sighing because I didn't meet their expectations. I make my own coffee, play music while I get ready, and there's no performance, no pressure to be impressive, just space to exist. The apartment's small, but it's mine. Every corner holds something that reflects me. The thrifted bookshelf filled with stories about women who rebuilt themselves, the messy art from pottery class, the half-dead plant I keep nursing back to life because I'm stubborn like that. It's funny, when I lived with Ryan, everything looked perfect. Coordinated furniture, spotless counters, matching wine glasses. Now nothing matches, and I've never felt more at home. Sometimes people still ask what happened. Coworkers, relatives, even strangers who remember seeing our engagement announcement online. I tell them the truth. He said he was embarrassed to introduce me to his colleagues. So I left. They always pause, eyes widening like they expect me to be joking. Then softly, good for you. Because most people know that feeling of shrinking yourself so someone else can stand taller. Most people just never walk away from it. At work, the promotion I took turned out to be the best decision I've made. My team respects me, my boss trusts me, and I've stopped trying to measure my worth in dollar signs or titles. The irony, I make more now than I did when Ryan was pushing me to aim higher. Turns out peace of mind is the best productivity hack. A few weeks ago, I got a letter. No return address, just his handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside, a single page. Robin, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I just wanted to tell you I finally understand what I lost. You never needed to impress anyone, least of all me. I hope you're happy. Ryan. I folded the letter, sat down at my kitchen table, and smiled. Because I am. Not because he apologized, but because I no longer need it. Closure isn't someone else admitting they were wrong. It's realizing you no longer need them to. I didn't respond. I didn't tear it up either. I just put it in a drawer, a reminder that once I loved someone who couldn't see me clearly, and that leaving was the bravest thing I've ever done. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped onto my balcony, and looked at the city lights. The air smelled like rain. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed loud, unrestrained, alive. And I thought maybe that's what love should feel like. Not like control, not like comparison, just alive. To anyone listening who's ever been told you're not enough, believe me, you are. You don't need to be impressive to be lovable. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who can't see it. Love isn't a resume, it's a mirror. If the person beside you makes you feel smaller every time you stand next to them, it's not love, it's erosion. Walk away before you disappear. And if you already did know this, you didn't lose. You began. Now, when I think of Ryan, I don't feel anger. I just feel clarity. He wanted someone impressive. I wanted someone kind. We both got what we deserved. And as for me, I finally learned that peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. Thank you for listening. If my story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes telling the truth about what broke you is how you start healing.